Sonny Boy is unlike any anime I've seen before. It's a surreal and often puzzling series about a middle school class stuck in a world that doesn't adhere to reality. And though the show can be easily confusing and give information faster than it seems that you can perceive it, there's something about its youthful energy, bold animation style, and relatability that you can't look away from. So I wanted to break apart this show and try to explain its meanings and themes to those who feel a bit lost after having viewed it. And as a warning, I'm going to spoil major plot points, including the ending of the show, and this video likely won't make much sense to those who haven't seen it. So if you haven't, I'd urge you to go and watch it, especially if you like weird and unique anime that go against the mainstream. Otherwise, let's begin. Sonny Boy was released in 2021 and created by Shingo Natsume, who worked as an animator and director on Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and One Punch Man. This is the first anime that he created as well as wrote and directed every episode for. The show starts with Class 232 of Shiraito Middle School, who one day suddenly find their school floating in a black void with all adults and other classes missing. Time doesn't seem to move as normal, objects and injuries fix themselves, and the internet is malfunctional. Each student has gained control of an individual superpower that is related to their respective personalities. The series focuses on Nagara, an average and apathetic teenage boy who wants nothing to do with the rest of his class, but is given significance due to his power, which at first seems to teleport him and the other students to different dimensions, or this worlds as they're called. But he finds his power is actually to create new alternative worlds out of thin air. His classmates fill out the rest of the ensemble cast as they come across these worlds and attempt to return home. The first time the students travel to another world, other than the Void, happens at the end of episode 2, where they end up on a deserted island which acts as a home base. They, and by extension the audience, quickly realize that this world has its own rules and laws separate from our world. It feels like anything can happen, and dreamlike occurrences in physics appear often. In episode 3, The Cat Who Wore Sandals, they find that students who are introverted or lack friendship in the real world regress into a dimension where they can indulge in lonesome activities like streaming and exercising, and appear on the outside as statues made of the same void that the school is drifting in. When Nagara and Mizuho find their way inside, they find a space with walls made entirely of blackout curtains over a hardwood floor. Notice the design of this world. It's a location that very closely resembles the work of David Lynch. I don't think this is a coincidence, and is a key to understanding this show's approach to storytelling. It's not uncommon to see surreal imagery in anime, but Sonny Boy is one of the few that I've seen that can be described as a completely surrealist work in the same way that a surrealist painting is. Like Lynch's films, Sonny Boy uses surreal images and situations to convey the emotions and experience of the characters in a physical space, or the workings of the unconscious mind made visible. This episode contains probably the easiest example of this, as students who are self-isolated occupy a world where they can be alone in a creation of their loneliness. That creation resembling similar curtains used to dim light in the classroom, to block out the rest of the world. So the void or stasis is a metaphor. That's easy to understand. But what is it a metaphor for? As the students are left to their own mercy without any accompanying adults or authority figures, they're left to create their own social order in a Lord of the Flies-esque student council. They set up a group chat where Cap is voted as leader on account of his natural ability, and his power which gives temporary penalties to students who go against the set rules. Even though Cap is elected official leader, Hoshi is the one who seems to have the most influence on the students. One of the more complex characters, Hoshi is the first to suggest a form of hierarchy from the outset, and views their situation as an easy way to obtain power. As he says in the first episode, "Sheep aren't that smart after all, I'm just gonna have to show them the way." He views his fellow students as mindless animals to control, and he uses Cap and former school president Pony as puppets for his ideas. However, his ideologies aren't consistent, and he's seen to change viewpoints depending on how popular consensus changes among the class. The students adhere to a form of order that mimics the real world, but without a deep understanding of how these customs work in the first place. They work in pilgrim-like settings and adopt a form of currency due to Mizuho's power, which can copy items from the real world. Her power causes the students to become suspicious of her abilities, as items that were taken from her out of fair trade start to burn up due to a law of the island. Pony leads a mob against her based on a rivalry the two shared in the real world, and carried over into this one. When Mizuho is proven innocent, they turn their blame to Nagara and make him a scapegoat, as they believe he caused the drift and is keeping his ability to return everyone home a secret. In actuality, Nagara has little to no control over his power. The students' anger turns ugly, and in episode 7 they sentence Nagara to a world where workers are made to continually build a tower up to heaven, explicitly referencing the Tower of Babel. It also resembles an ant colony that Raj was overlooking at the start of the episode, observing that when ants are desperate, they feast on each other until there's only one left. The workers construct the tower tirelessly over hundreds of years, without any question as to why or who for. They find relief only in work gossip, the possibility of finding treasure, and a legend of a room where shooting stars fall from inside the cave, being their only belief system. A belief which proves fatal when Nagara and a naive worker find it. Nagara notices that they carry concrete blocks down rather than the logical upward to heaven, as gravity is upside down due to a mysterious umbrella bat creature called Kalmari. Kalmari turns out to be a student Nagara knew in childhood, who is exceptional on an exercise bar, the very item which transported Nagara to this world. Nagara expressed in childhood how he doesn't want to be like Kalmari, despite his talent, and chooses to go his own way as he starts carrying blocks upward, opposing to the other workers. This is a pivotal development for Nagara, who before only wanted to disappear in the crowd. He finds purpose in his individuality. As the rest of the class becomes more desperate, it's clear that they lack a proper authority figure. This seems to change when a teacher arrives on the island named Miss Aki, who at first takes on a savior role, but only feeds into the anger against Nagara. And as it turns out, Miss Aki is only a younger version of herself from when she was a student at the same school. It's explained that only students of Shiraito can enter this stasis, regardless of time period. When she's asked why she's here, she replies, "Because God needed me to," and claims that the principal is God. The principal appears sporadically on the island in an omnipresent manner. Perhaps this is because in a school setting, to these students a principal is the highest authority over teachers, and acts as a godlike figure over their lives during this period. Misaki becomes close to Azakaze, a student who has an intense rivalry and hatred for Nagara, and who presents his powers as a messiah figure among the students. Misaki praises him and acts overly affectionate with him, and she and the principal give strange important tasks to Azakaze. As a result, Azakaze becomes self-entitled and imposes control over Nagara and the class. He maintains that he has higher importance over the other students, in part because of his power to change the shape of the world around him. But when he finally gets the chance to show the extent of his power, he ultimately fails and is responsible for bringing death to this world. During the class's time on the island, Mizuho comes across a dog, Yamabiko, who used to be real-world student Yamada Kunihiko. He tells of his travels through the various worlds, until he came upon a group of castaways led by Komada, who has similar powers to Azakaze, but treats her fellow students in the world around her with kindness. This peaceful existence is interrupted by the arrival of a figure named War. After his appearance, an illness causing red crystal-like lesions begins appearing on the group's bodies, until nothing is left but the crystals. This illness was directly caused by War, who says he's killed over 10,000 before. He reveals to Yamabiko that the illness is a manifestation of real-world mental scars carried by Yamabiko. Yamabiko is similar to Nagara. He arrived in and created the stasis as a result of his apathetic nature to lock out the rest of the world. He refused to resolve or even acknowledge his problems and became shut out for over 5,000 years in stasis. Eventually his problems not only affected himself but those around him. Spreading his apathy to this group, he briefly discovered joy in. If this stasis is a metaphor for the mental imbalance among these students, then why are some of them able to die while inside it? In episode 11, The Young Man in the Sea, after Raj leaves for 2,000 years on a solo journey to explore the various worlds, he comes back and tells of his newfound knowledge, similar to Yamabiko. He tells the story of an inventor, who became obsessed with inventing death as a way to escape stasis. He describes him as an utterly despicable person who abused the stasis to commit his acts against it, and denied God. He was eventually successful in inventing death, and used the experiment on himself. He didn't die in a traditional sense, but instead of railing against what he saw as imperfections, he could accept them. His hatred had reigned. He came to realize that once he moved beyond such things, that was the end of life as it was. When Raj remembers the inventor, he's shown on screen to be Hoshi. If the principal was God in this world, then Hoshi became a kind of devil. His deceiver-like actions and lust for power overgrew him, until eventually it left nothing resembling his former self. Death in the stasis seems to not be one of the body, but of the mind. If the island is a construct of creation, then the opposite would be a destruction of creation or identity. That's what Nagara and the other students are at risk of at the start of the show. The show poses that a complete repression of personality and identity is a form of death in and of itself, as Nagara found among the workers of the tower, becoming nothing more than mindless ants. That embrace of personality and the unique differences between him and the other students is a way of combating a complete fall into apathy. In episode 6, Hoshi and Nozomi argue about knowing what the future holds. Hoshi argues that knowledge is power, and that it's better for someone to work for what's helpful for everyone than for the self. Nozomi counters that despite knowing what the future holds, taking the safe route robs one of any point of living in the first place. The students witness a very crisis of identity when they encounter a student, So Seiji, who in stasis has split into two separate identities, So and Seiji, who are nearly identical to each other, save for Seiji having a single hair over So. They both carry a power called Reverse, which can undo any attack that the two make on each other, which results in a looped rivalry between the two, lasting thousands of years. This is only ended when Misaki introduces a gun to So. He uses it successfully to kill Seiji, but then uses it on himself too. As he says, "The victory feels hollow, because now I've lost my purpose." This theme of personalization in the face of destruction is further explored in episode 4, The Great Monkey Baseball. This is one of the most puzzling episodes of any anime, as it presents an abundance of information in an entirely new mythos within the present one. In it, Cap tells the group a story of a world called Monkey Mountain, which only students possessing a particular flashlight can see. In this world is a group of sentient monkeys who are passionate about baseball after being gifted a book on it one day by Ace. Baseball gave a sense of identity to the otherwise identical monkeys, in particular the only monkey with blue hair, who became the best player in spite of discrimination. The story takes a dark turn when an otherwise perfect game is halted by a ball in the final inning, and the umpire refusing to yield on the results, causing the crowd to go feral and tear him apart. Nozomi commends the umpire for protecting the rules of the game against the riled crowd, but Ace, Shiraito's baseball prodigy and another rival of Nagara, sees it as a fable on a world where the talented are held back by the whims of the mediocre. Ace uses his talent for baseball as the basis of his identity. He's miserable in a world where he's no longer seen as a prodigy and takes his chance to win his respect back by making a deal with Nagara. Nagara loses the game, but gains the ability to see the monkeys without need of the flashlight, and is able to see Nozomi's point of the umpire protecting the game of baseball itself. He talks with Cap after the game, who tells him that he was thinking of creating baseball in the real world. As he explains, "A long time ago we all played for the fun of it, but it became about whether we had the talent or if it would get us into college. For the first time in a while, I felt like I want to play baseball." He loves the game of baseball and is a natural leader, but he doesn't lose himself in it and use it to feel dominance like Ace does. Nozomi's influence is one of the most important factors in Nagara's development in the show. She shows the same resilience in standing up for herself and her beliefs as opposed to the impressionable students. Kosetsu, a student with the ability to hear thoughts, says that Nozomi is the only one who never lied to the others during their time in stasis. And though her beliefs can sometimes border on anarchistic, her unshakenness challenges Nagara and helps break his apathetic nature. There's a running theme in the show involving birds and feathers. At the start, Nagara comes across a dead bird at the gate of the school. A teacher suspects Nagara of killing it, though he claims not to have, and Nozomi questions his ability to feel strong emotion over it and why he didn't help the bird. At first Nagara doesn't feel anything and acts defensive, but as the show progresses and he breaks free of his shell, he's no longer quick to flee from confronting situations, as evidenced by his concern for a bird's nest at a train station at the end of the show. The only one of the students who may truly relate to Nagara is Mizuho. She too pushed the real world aside and saw herself more as a cat than as a student. When she loses one of her cats, she expresses worry that she wasn't ready to survive on her own, a feeling that her cats share about her. Like Nagara, she was a victim of scapegoating by the other students, and like Nagara, she opens up a considerable amount throughout the course of the show. At the start of the show, just before the drift, the teacher consoles Nagara over something related to his mother, and shows worry about his mental state. Nagara never mentions his parents at any part of the show, but lives alone in an apartment. Meanwhile, Mizuho reveals that she's taken the cats from her grandmother, who is suffering from dementia, but is not able to care for them in the real world for much longer. Both characters start the show at stressful times in their lives when they enter stasis, and with graduation approaching, they are on the cusp of becoming functioning adults. A confusing time, especially for this cast who deal with the previously mentioned issues of identity and apathy, and for the first time in their lives, realizing their future isn't planned out and is unwritten. As Misaki says when she appears on the beach, you still need to finish your education. This is the final lesson in their education into becoming adults. I think that's what the This Worlds and Sonny Boy represent. A collective experience of the transition between adolescence and adulthood. After Nagara and Mizuho finally escape the drift, they are two of the only students who have any memory of the time inside. Because this experience is taken in individually, but also collectively, and is inevitable for every character in the show and is unbound by time. By the time Nagara is returned to the real world, it's the same day as it started, like nothing happened. He graduates and has a job in an apartment. He hasn't been changed physically, but he no longer sees the world without any emotion. As he finds, as Raj explained, life is a constant cycle of vain endeavors, but at the same time, since it is meaningless, then this moment of becoming is a precious and beautiful thing indeed. That one moment belongs to that person alone. That and everything I talked about is what makes Sonny Boy such a unique show. It uses the visual and audio medium of anime to tell a story that is emotionally familiar, with characters that are relatable to anyone and everyone, and uses it to tell a story that brings up those very emotions and experiences, and brings them all together in a way that only animation can do.